Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Newsmakers. I'm Fred Martino. We have as our guest for this program today the Deputy Consul General from the Mexican Consulate in El Paso, Ricardo Hernandez. Ricardo, thank you so much for being with us.
Fred, thank you very much. And on behalf of the Consul General Marcos Bucio and the personnel that are part of the Consulate General of Mexico, thank you very much and being honored to be here at your program.
Well, it is an honor to have you here, and I am really glad that you had a chance to come and join us today because, as I told you before our time together on the air, this will be an education for me as well, to learn more about what you do. And I really do want to start with the basics about the role of the consulate for folks who don't know much about it.
Well, of course, the Consulate General, as other consular representations, we are the representation of the government of Mexico in our circumscription. Our circumscription is the Hobbs County and El Paso County, and 11 counties more from the southwest of New Mexico, in between, of course, Las Cruces. And being the representative of the government of Mexico, we perform different actions and different works, different jobs. Mainly represent the government of Mexico for things related with Mexican nationals, protection department, documentation, and promoters of a trade, culture, and education. And it's a very vast job that we have to perform there. So we have different departments specialized each one in one of the different tasks.
Okay, so tell me about your most commonly used services at the consulate, the things that people enter the door for.
Yes. Actually, every single day we open Monday, Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we receive a lot of people looking for their matrículas consulares, the consular ID card, and Mexican passports, okay? Some others looks to register their U.S.-born children and in order to get the Mexican nationality, so we can register them because the parents have Mexican nationality. They're entitled also for Mexican nationality besides being U.S. citizens being born in this country.
So dual citizenship.
That's correct. It's what we normally people know as dual citizenship. But what about if you born in the United States, your father is from Mexico, your mother is from Portugal, and you married with a French? Multinationality.
Okay, so
and that's recognized by the Constitution as well as immigration law of Mexico. That we recognize multiple nationality if it's possible.
Okay, so those are services that are utilized by Mexican citizens.
Correct.
But you also have services for U.S. citizens as well.
Definitely. If you are a U.S. citizen that want to visit Mexico for business purposes or to study or to perform an activity, remunerated activity whatsoever, you have to obtain a visa to stay legally in Mexico as well as this country that allows you to be as a student, as a worker, as a professional, or whatsoever. So many Americans look to us for obtaining their visas and the way to enter into Mexico and perform these activities legally as Mexican immigration law allows them.
Now, is that required for a U.S. citizen, a visa for someone who is not going to reside in Mexico?
No, if your visit is for, let's say, tourist, and less than 180 days, you are entitled to have your non-visa status up to 180 days for touristic purposes. So you can go to the beach, you can go to the mountain, you can go wherever you want. You want to see Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, San Miguel de Allende, or go to Baja California or whatever. You are entitled to go as American.
Okay.
Because some other foreigners require visa in order to be into Mexico. Let's say if you are Brazilian, well, no more Brazilians, but Bolivians, for example, they're required a visa to get into Mexico even as a tourist.
How about for students who will still live in the United States? I saw a story recently about a nursing program in Juarez where they were going to try to recruit more students from the United States to travel across the border each day to go to school.
Well, it is exactly right. They have to have their visas in order.
So they do have to have a visa, even if they aren't living in Mexico.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because obeying the law, it says that you're going to perform as a student, you have to have your visa for that kind of specific purpose.
Okay. It's one of the things that's very exciting about living in this area is that we truly are a binational community.
Exactly. Interdependent one to each other.
That's right. That's right. So recently, consulates in the United States, and there are 50, have been in the news. As you know, Mexico launched legal aid programs at all 50 consulates for Mexican nationals who fear that they might be deported from the United States. Tell me about that program and how it's being utilized in El Paso.
Well, that program was developed to give a real scenario to these people. Okay, we have many people undocumented into this country, and they have sometimes an non-real fear. So what we do with this information, with this legal aid, is giving them the idea of what could happen if they can apply for a regularization, if they can apply or not, if they have a background that allows to be regularized because they married with a U.S. citizen, or they have kids born in the United States, or because they have some such time living in this country and paying taxes and working hard as any other normal person, decent person. So we inform them that which possibilities you have in order to remain documented into this country. And if you, for example, have any background that is not very helpful, we have to let you know that your chances are not so good. And this is quite important. Why? Because we want to avoid these people goes to that kind of, they call them lawyers, immigration lawyers, and they are not lawyers. They are just, in fact, people that in-person lawyers. They are not. They are notary publics or whatsoever, and they are taking their money, their documents. They promise them that they are going to regularize their situation or whatsoever, and the only thing they do is just keep their documents and steal their money.
So for folks watching this, if they have family members who they know are in the United States without documentation and from Mexico, this is a good resource for them to know about, to go to the consulate, because you have legitimate legal aid to help them and guide them in the right way.
Exactly. Trying to help them to find a real situation, if you are entitled or if you are not, and just being aware that you cannot do it. Okay, that's help. By some way, that helps. Okay, gives you a real perspective.
Yeah. In a recent El Paso Times article, the consulate in El Paso has said that you have a very good relationship with law enforcement throughout the area. And this is something that I know that is very important for you to make clear to people, that you work with U.S. law enforcement.
The thing is that, of course, we are on the side of our Mexican nationals, okay? We fight for their rights, but also we have to work together with authorities in order to teach our people to obey the law. If you are undocumented into this country, that do not allows you or is not convenient to break any other kind of law. For example, don't drink and drive. Don't drive without insurance or without having a driver's license. Do not look for problems with your neighbors or whatsoever. Behave as a normal and decent, hardworking people does in this country. So that's the way we encourage them to obey the law, to be obedient of the law, which is not only for the United States, is also necessary in everywhere in the world that you are living, because you have to obey the law.
Yeah.
So law obedience is what we try to teach to our people in order to, because being law obedient avoids you problem and confrontation, a very probable confrontation with immigration authorities.
Yeah. So tell me about the demand for these legal aid services. Certainly there are, as you know, a lot of people who are very concerned in the United States about the current political climate, concerned about increased in deportation actions. How would you characterize the demand for the services?
Definitely, there is a group, very important group, people looking for that kind of advisory, because they want to know their real perspective. Okay, if they're going to invest money, invest time, and if they're going to embark on this task, but if you don't, as I mentioned you before, okay, you have to find out that it's not convenient, and unfortunately is not a possibility for you. That's a very important thing. However, we have other part. We have a lot of people, which is legal LPRs, legal permanent residents, green card holders, okay, that they do not become citizens of this country. They already being obedient, they comply with the immigration law, they already been paying taxes, they already been example for their family members as good parents and good workers and whatsoever, but they did not claim yet the naturalization, which is very important. Why? Because you have all the obligations as a U.S. citizen without the rights.
Yeah.
And the right is to be vote and to make your voice listened.
So you encourage that?
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing increased contacts from folks who are legal permanent residents in the U.S. Coming to the consulate for services?
Very successfully.
Okay.
We up to now we have 4 workshops. In each and every one, probably no less than 250 people coming to us. We have the participation as Social Catholic Services, just to give an example, which are our partners. So we partner with a very recognized and very knowledge institutions that provide that kind of services. So people comes to the consulate, we help them to fill up the applications, to find out their possibilities in order to become citizens. And I can tell you that probably the numbers run a little bit over 1,000 people looking for become citizens of this country.
That's wonderful news. So, you know, on the flip side, as you know, as I mentioned, so many people are concerned about the political rhetoric right now. And we even had a visit not too long ago by Attorney General Jeff Sessions to El Paso, where he called the border ground zero for fighting crime. What was your reaction to this when you heard this?
Well, the policy of Consul General and the policy of government of Mexico is try to help the lawmakers of this state to portray the reality of the region. The border is not a ground zero, is not a war zone. Otherwise, it's a very interdependent community. If you look towards El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, your neighbor state, Chihuahua, they are partners in a lot of very successful business. People that lives in Ciudad Juarez and works in El Paso, and otherwise, every single day crossing the border legally in order to perform legal activities in both sides of a border. So there are many maquiladoras depending on the U.S. side, and many U.S. side companies that depend on Mexico's maquiladoras. So that is an interdependence that you cannot conceive El Paso without Juarez or Juarez without El Paso. It's very, very unique.
Yes, it is. It certainly is. You know, as you mentioned, business is a big part of this, but this is also under threat. A lot of people are worried because the Trump administration has made threats in terms of the North American Free Trade Agreement, saying at first we're going to get rid of it. Now it's, you know, well, we'll negotiate, we'll try to renegotiate some of the terms of NAFTA. as you point out, this is important not only to Mexico, but this is important to the United States, particularly in our region, because folks who work in economic development in this area say that there are a lot of jobs in the U.S. dependent upon the national trade that occurs, the international trade, and NAFTA. What give us a sense of the concern in Mexico about this?
Well, one of the best ways to measure this is the rate, and the peso rate right now, it's very stable. It's decreasing instead of increasing, as when Mr. Trump make his first statements. Okay, now Mr. Trump make a reconsideration and said, okay, I have received a phone call from First Minister Trudeau of Canada and President of Mexico, and we have to reconsider. Probably we have to renegotiate. I think that he's putting attention of all these comments coming from your lawmakers, senators, council members, and in Texas and New Mexico, saying, hey, Mr. President, remember that we are a binational community, very interdependent. So the best or the most important partner of Texas, for example, is Mexico. Okay. And a very important partner of the state of New Mexico is Mexico too. So we are talking about an interdependence, and besides being afraid, I think as President of Mexico said, it's a very good opportunity to restudy and redesign the free trade agreement in terms that is convenient for both parts. For three parts, Mexico, Canada, and the United States, because remember that this is a three-party agreement. And of course, an agreement that was approved by the Senate, by the Congress of the United States. So that means it's the decision of the legislative, and that means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So regardless of what happens with NAFTA, some people say on the ground there has already been some effect on folks' habits, maybe not traveling as often from Mexico to the United States. Do you see that? Are you hearing that?
No, actually there are some concerned people from Mexico willing to trip to the United States. I personally have one story that for sure I know very well. He says, I'm a little concerned about my very, very soon trip to the United States. And I said, you know what, you don't have to be afraid. The law is the law and have to be applied as ever until the law changes. The law is not changed up to now. So this is something that we have to consider, and very important, that there are many more legal crossings from Mexico into the U.S. as U.S.-Mexico than illegal crossings. Okay, this is something that we have to put very high as on a mark, and a special mark, because unfortunately when you talk about your neighbors, you talk about drug dealers, smugglers, and whatever, and instead of Mexicans being seen as your brother, your neighbor, with commitment for both parts, some people looks as a very inconvenient neighbor or very inconvenient foreigner. That is not the case. Okay, we are partners since the very beginning with the United States, because national security is not just for the United States, but for Mexico too. Yeah. So we're partners in national security. We're partnering with the United States in this regard. And drug smugglers are here and there, and we are fighting together the very same problem.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, that was the rhetoric of President Trump in his campaign, following the campaign, but not the rhetoric of the great majority of politicians. And in fact, as you're aware, in El Paso, Congressman Beto O'Rourke specifically pushes back against that rhetoric. He's now running for U.S. Senate, presumably will be taking on Ted Cruz in Texas, and speaks fluent Spanish, talks about Mexico as a partner, that we are one community. Tell me about the importance of that there is that other side.
What we consider very important is people that speaks about Mexico knows about the subject. and Beto O'Rourke knows a lot. You have to live there. You have to live at the border. You have to know the zone. You have to know the communities that lives in both sides of the border. Knowing that, you have an exact idea, and you can be able to take that message and portray that image into Washington, where lawmakers take decisions. Unfortunately, lawmakers sometimes make decisions with improper information. But nowadays, Texas, as New Mexico, as California, as Arizona, must take the reality to Washington, stating that, we are neighbors, we depend into each other. What happens to me affects the other side and vice versa. So being good neighbors is sharing concerns, sharing opportunities, sharing wellness, and that's exactly what we look for towards people like Beto O'Rourke, like all these lawmakers, senators, council members, that knows the reality, lives in their community, and they are putting attention on their community claim and their community opinion about, people there in Washington are so far and they have to come here to see what the truth is and what happened in this zone. And that's very remarkable, and we trust and we're willing to help these lawmakers in order to get a better idea of Mexico. Even Beto O'Rourke cross quite often into Mexico and to Ciudad Juarez and southern, and he knows very well he's talking about.
And he tells that story, and we've talked a lot about politicians here, but let's talk about the people who live here. In your view, what can the person who's watching this program today do to try to build bridges rather than walls between our two countries and our people?
Be informed. Just be informed.
Yeah.
Just put attention about what good sources of information provides. Okay, I think the media is responsible to inform people with the real good sources and being involved in real situations, and allow other parties, as Mexico's representatives, to be here and to have a voice, to be listened with another perspective. People think that because we have undocumented Mexicans working into this country, this is just to give you an example, they are a burden for the United States of America. However, what we encourage to our undocumented community is, you know what, you are undocumented, you probably are not entitled to have a social security number. However, you are entitled to have an ITIN, individual tax identification number, provided by the same IRS. Therefore, obtain your ITIN and pay taxes. That's what a normal person, a committed person, and a decent person does. Okay. And besides, that helps because in their way to the possibility of regularization, immigration judge is going to take very in count that, you are being part of the successful America we are now. You are helping us with the economic burden. Instead of being a burden, you are helping us to make a greater America with your contribution, paying taxes that supports highways, better schools, better hospitals, and everything, instead of being someone that sucks money and sucks services, pay nothing.
Yeah, that's building bridges. But as you know,
yes,
there's a lot of talk still about a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And we already have a wall, we already have fences, but there's talk about extending that. Tell me about the impact of that in Mexico and in our area in particular.
Well, I think the people that lives in the area looks the construction of the wall very differently because they live there. Okay, for Mexico, build a wall is not a good message. It's not a very friendly way to behave with your neighbor. You are entitled to do what you consider in your country, to do what you think is better for your community. We, Mexico, are very respectful with that right because we honored the law of this country and each and every country in the world is your own decision.
Yeah.
And if your law says and your community are your constituents required to build a wall, it's the decision of the United States. But if that sounds good or that looks good, that's another thing.
Yeah.
And the message that you're giving is another one.
Yeah. Tell me, in our final minutes here, your story, how you came to a career with the consulate. You've been all over the country at various consulates before coming to El Paso, and you're obviously very passionate about this work.
Oh, sure. I began in 1995. My first consulate was the Consulate General of Mexico in Phoenix, Arizona. Then I moved to San Francisco, then Albuquerque, where I stay as a consul for documentation and protection, make an LLM and a UNM. I'm a Lobo, by the way. No hard feelings to you, Ogis.
Not at all.
Okay. Then I've been transferred to open our consulate in St. Paul, Minnesota, the cold Minnesota.
That's right.
But nice Minnesota. Later on, I moved finally my first round into Nogales, Arizona. And I need to go to Nogales because I have to have the real taste of a border situation. After being in Nogales for almost 3 years, a little bit more than 3 years, I have to go back to Mexico as Director of Consular Affairs. And then they said, you know, Juan, you in 4 years here in Mexico, we better kick you out. we need you somewhere else, which is now I am very pleased because I asked to be posted here in El Paso. I'm blessed.
And why did you choose the career?
Because I think that it's an honor, a privilege to serve your country abroad, to serve the people that most need you out of your country. There are a lot of Mexicans needing protection for their government, and that's why I am here and I am being given that opportunity also to represent the government of Mexico in this very commitment post as to work together with the United States in order to improve our conditions of trade, culture, and economy, and definitely to portray the word of being friends, not distant neighbors.
All right. Well, that's a great way for us to conclude today. Ricardo Hernandez, he is the Deputy Consul General for the Mexican Consulate in El Paso. Thank you for being with us.
No, thank you very much, Fred. And on behalf again, Mr. Consul Bucio, Marcos Bucio, which is our Consul General, which is a very good politician, very wise person, and I respect him, and I really like the work he's doing, and being part of his team, as well as the team we're part of the Consulate General. Thank you very much to open each and every gate of the wonderful people, which is your audience in this program. Thank you very much, very honored, and we hope to see you again very soon.
Absolutely, we would love that. Thank you again, and thank you at home for joining us for Newsmakers. I'm Fred Martino. Have a great week.